I lived in 10 different homes by the time I was 10 years old, and at this point in my life, 43 years old, almost 43, I will have lived in over 35 different homes. The weird part is no place has ever really felt like home, especially the place where I spent most of my time growing up. Let that sink in for a bit. And you may be able to relate if you were a military kid, or if your parents just moved around a lot, or if you were in foster care. I think I've always been sort of searching for that home feeling. And the hometown that I spent most of my years in, it feels familiar, but it doesn't feel like home. And first of all, before I continue on with this video, I want to make sure that we're aware this is not a pity party in any way. I want to talk about how this has shaped me and actually made me stronger. And there are some, whatever little negative tidbits in there that I've had to overcome. But all in all, I don't know if I'd change it. When you move around a lot as a kid, you just you're not just changing houses or changing neighborhoods, you're literally changing worlds. Everything feels super big. You're changing the school system that you're in. You're changing your friends. You're changing your immediate environment. You're changing everything. Consistent goodbyes, and you learn how to make friends fast, but you also learn how to lose friends fast. And I think that's why I'm so comfortable being alone and by myself. At the same time, I developed some abandonment issues. We'll get into that in a second. But in general, I'm okay and I'm confident being alone. I'm not a loner. It's not like I am a recluse and I, haul up in my home and I'm afraid to go outdoors or anything like that. I'm not saying all loners are like that. But if you've ever seen me teach or seen me in public or seen me, out of the grocery store or whatever, I'm a very sociable person and I do like being around people. And at the same time, I really enjoy my own space. I love building my own things. I don't mind working on a team, but I'm really just comfortable in my own skin. I can go sit in a cafe by myself. I can go to the movie theater by myself. I can grab dinner at a fancy restaurant by myself. I can sit at the bar by myself. Not so much anymore because I'm happily married and I don't drink. But I am okay doing things alone. And I think it's because I had to learn at a very young age how to entertain myself and how to be alone. Now, did I have my mom? Did I have my dad? Did I have my older brothers? Yes, for a time being. And this is probably where some of the abandonment issues came in. I was 7 or 8 and we had already moved 7 or 8 times. So friends were fleeting, right? And my parents ended up getting a divorce and we moved from Georgia up to Ohio, but my dad stayed in Atlanta. So I only saw him a couple times a year. I would spend my summers or the majority of my summers in Atlanta, but all at the same time, when my parents got divorced, I lost my dad, so to speak. My brothers were 10 and 11 years older than me. So by the time my parents got divorced, they were moving out of the house. So it was just myself and my mom, and of course, a brand new neighborhood, brand new friends, lost the current friends that I had. And even then, after the divorce, we moved around a few more times before we actually settled into the place, I would say, where I spent the majority of my childhood, from the time I was like 9 years old and up. You would think that 10 plus years in one place would be enough time to establish that sort of home feeling, but it never felt like home. Again, it felt familiar, but it didn't always feel like home. It never really has. Let's go back to the positives, because a skill that I was learning that I did not realize I was learning at the time was really just how to be able to sit with myself. I also learned how to do a lot of things on my own. Because when you're working in a team environment, you've got this person doing that thing, that person doing that thing. And when you're working alone or by yourself, you sort of have to have the skill to do everything, which I think most people are capable of. I just don't think maybe they have the temperament for. And one of the skills that I learned growing up, jumping around from place to place, losing friends, making new friends, having to, be comfortable in brand new environments, is having the temperament to be able to do everything on my own. And in fact, I remember in my more formative years, I would take pride in that. I wanted to do things by myself because I wanted to say I did it all on my own. I didn't have help. Of course, we know that's not true. I had help from family or whatever, emotional support, a place to live. I wanted to do it on my own. And that's always been important to me. So I think a lot of people can relate, especially if they, were military brats. They grew up with a parent or both parents in the military. Maybe if you were in foster care and you had to jump around, or maybe your parents just happened to move a lot like my parents did. Sort of developed this attraction to, jumping around or moving around or maybe traveling. Or you get antsy if you sit in one spot too long. It's not a criticism on the upbringing, that's just a side effect of that sort of upbringing. But it has brought me so much joy because I haven't been afraid to try new things. I'm not afraid to try new things, fail, and then try something again. I'm used to it. I grew up that way. I made new friends. We moved. That was complete failure. Those friends didn't stick around. It's not like I was just moving from one house in the neighborhood to the next. We were literally moving to different cities. This wasn't just house jumping. Now, going back to the abandonment part, I think I've always been a bit afraid of being abandoned, which makes sense. My parents got divorced. My dad, I don't want to say he abandoned me, but my dad stayed in Atlanta. My brothers moved out of the house like they should have, but everything just sort of felt like it had ripped away. And at the time, I didn't really process it. And even into my 20s and early 30s, I was like, that didn't affect me in any way. And then I realized that a lot of the actions that I have taken in my life were based out of fear of abandonment. So all the while, I'm not afraid to try new things or experiment or fail in certain areas, but certain decisions I was making in my life it was me trying to avoid being abandoned, whether it be by a significant other or a family member or a friend, or maybe by myself, being abandoned by myself. I don't even know what that means. I'm getting too psychoanalytical. I'll have to think that one over. I really came to the realization that one of the reasons that I drank every weekend was because of my fear of abandonment. And I made a little YouTube short about this not too long ago. Maybe I'll do another video about it. And besides overcoming that fear of abandonment, I don't know if I would change much about my childhood, because I feel like it has really given me the strength to be able to forge forward and go out and do things and try new things and not be afraid of that failure. I'm still sort of trying to figure out where home is. And as I become more secure in myself, especially in my 40s, the puzzle pieces are sort of starting to really fit together. Like I'm starting to really hone in on how to communicate, what serves me in my relationship and what doesn't, what serves me in my work and what doesn't, my likes and dislikes. And as that whole picture starts to come together, my inner self, I'm finding that home is whatever is in here and wherever there's water. I think I want to be someplace where there's water. I haven't felt happiness like this ever in my entire life. And I think it's because a lot of the puzzle pieces in my life are starting to really click. I probably have to credit a lot of that to jumping around so much. That has allowed me the temperament and the ability to try new things, throw things at the wall, see what sticks, what doesn't. Because instead of getting so attached to something to the point where I'm afraid to jump ship or give something else a try, I've often looked at people who plant roots and they live in the same house for 40 years or 50 years, and I admire them. Because they are secure in whatever's going on outside of their immediate environment. And here I am feeling, I don't know, like something's missing all the time, like something's missing. And at the same time, nothing's missing. It just might be one of those things that I think it's just one of those things I've learned to live with and to adapt. So if you feel very similar, like every place is your home and no place is your home at the same time, I'd like to hear your story. I think I'm going to have to make a list about how many physical houses or apartments I have lived and also how many cities I have lived. That would be interesting. So anyway, that's my story on how I became to be so comfortable with me.